What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining us. In today's episode, it's a bit of a different one, and I'm going to be talking about how you can properly manage your project car and your build without it becoming the cliche 200% overspend and 300% overtime project. So stay with us. I've developed a tool for everybody to use and we're going to run through it. This episode is all about how you can better manage your project and how to actually achieve your goals of what you want to do with your car, because at the end of the day it's really about the fun of the build and getting to that objective that you've set out for yourself and for your project. To do this, we're going to cover three main areas. Number one, decide what you want with an objective and stick to it. Don't vary from the plan. This is very, very important because a lot of the time we set out with a certain plan in mind, and as we get going, the plan evolves. And that is the biggest danger in the what we call scope creep, project creep, or whatever we want to call it. It's just that the thing evolves, it becomes an animal. The deeper you dig, the more you find, and so it goes. You'll always have an element of that, but it's important to focus on what you want from the project. So I mentioned the term scope. This is a project management term, but basically what it means is you need to define what you are going to do to the car. So what I've done is I've built a tool. We're going to jump into that pretty soon. That's going to help you do this. And you need to go into not too much detail, but enough information that gives you an idea. You also need to define the long-term goal for the car. So let's say we buy a car, it is a fun project, and the objective of the project is to go and do track days with the car. That means you're going to build the car according to those specifications. You're going to build a car as a track day car. It must fulfill certain roles. So it must drive to and from the track. It must do laps at the track. And it must be reliable. So what does that mean? Well, that means that the suspension cannot be too hard, too aggressive, because you need to drive it to and from the track. But it must be able to handle. So you would then build and define the car around those characteristics and those requirements. We call that scope definition, but basically that's where you start. You start with what is the actual objective of your car. Then you can look at short and long-term goals for the project or for the car. So you can say, okay, well, we're going to start here, but we're going to evolve to a different place with the car. So we're going to start doing track days, but then later we want to actually take part in some sort of race, an endurance race or just a fun thing, whatever the case may be. So you have to look at the long-term goal and maybe set up your project in different phases to say, okay, phase one, we're just going to get started and have the car just do track days. And then we'll do a phase two where we will then further upgrade the car so that it's more focused on racing, etc. Number two, give yourself a deadline or a target. This is very important. If you don't have a deadline, the project will be open-ended and you will never finish the project. Why is that important? Because the deadline will drive your cost. And it seems a bit weird to say something like that, but if you want to do the project short and very fast and aggressive, as we call it, then it's going to potentially cost you more because you need maybe more resources and blah, 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 blah. You need to expedite things and send them away and you can't do it here and there. Then you will have to look at that as an option. But if you don't give yourself a deadline or a time to complete the project, what inevitably happens is the project just runs and runs and you never really close out tasks. So we normally divide the project up into subcategories, which I will show you soon, and then you complete or plan the tasks according to a certain build sequence. Now, I have a sequence that I follow, but you don't have to follow that sequence. It all depends on how you want to do things and what you can do with your time. But it's always good to have a finish or an objective. So let's say you're building a track day car and you want to do a track day 6 months from now. That means you're giving yourself 6 months to finish the project, and which is a realistic timeline depending on what you want to do. But you can't say, okay, I've just bought this car and we don't really know, we're just going to have fun. That's also fine, but it doesn't give you an end point, a goal. So inevitably then what will happen is you'll get started and it'll sit there, and you won't really be able to close out tasks. So it's really important to give yourself a focused goal that you work towards in terms of a timeline. I'm going to show you how that's important in the tool I've developed for you. The next point, number 3, how much is it going to cost you? Now this is very, very important because everybody drives their project by cost. There's always 2 elements in any project, and this can be any project in the world. There's actually 3 elements: cost, time, and quality. These are the 3 cornerstones of any project. If you want a higher quality, it's going to cost you both cost and time. If you want it cheap, then you're going to have to sacrifice on the quality. If you want a quick project, you're going to have to sacrifice on quality, and it might cost you more in terms of cost. So cost is probably the biggest factor in all of this, and then time. Time and cost are strongly linked because if you want to do it quicker, it always costs you more. If you do it over a longer period of time, you can therefore look for better priced options. You have more time for engineering, development, etc., more weekends to do stuff. And inevitably, we're doing this as a hobby. We're not doing this as a full-time job. So you need time to be able to close out the project, but if you need to get it done quicker, you have to farm out the work so that you can get it done quicker while you are doing your day job. What does that mean? That means higher costs. So that's why it is strongly linked. But you need to understand what is your base cost, and we call this your budgeted or your planned cost. So in order to get there, I will show you how we're going to break it down and how you can come up with a base cost, a planned cost or a budgeted cost for what you think your project is going to be, and then you can link that to how long it's going to take you. So stay with us, let me take you through the spreadsheet. If you want to see some more of this kind of content, please consider subscribing. Just click on the subscribe button, hit the bell, and you're good to go. Alright, so what I've put together here is an Excel spreadsheet with that you can use to track your costs. So to build your plan, build your budget, and then track your costs against your plan or your budget. And the other thing that I have in here is I've built a simple schedule to allow you to do basic planning for this. Now, if you want to do advanced planning, I would then recommend using a planning tool like Microsoft Projects, probably the most accessible, cheapest tool. There are free platforms out there, but you can also use Oracle Primavera. But that's specific planning software that's not available to everybody. So Microsoft Excel is probably the easiest way to do it. I will link this spreadsheet in the description so you can have it and download it and do what you want with it. I'm going to start on the planned and actual cost sheet. Now, this is where you set up your planned costs. So what does planned costs mean? Well, what do you want to do to the car? We want to put in suspension. We want to put different brakes on the car. We want to add different wheels, different tires, and maybe do a roll cage, do an ECU upgrade as phase 1 of this project, and something like that. Maybe do an engine upgrade, but more boost, whatever you want to do, different seat, wheel, and half a cage, something like that. And what you would do is I have created categories. So if you look at the cost category column, I've created different categories for you to capture your cost against, or plan your cost against. And these categories are defined here in the cost. The cost sheet defines the categories. So I've put all of the cost sheet is basically your report. So this is where you will look to see how much you've planned versus how much you've actually spent to date. And it'll give you an over or under budget comparison here. And then it also gives you a little graph that you can compare. So I haven't put any actual costs in, and I'm going to show you how you do that now. But these are the different categories that I have put in place for you. So we start with the base vehicle. This is the donor car. If you have to buy a car, then let's say I've planned 55,000 Rand for that. Now you can go and adjust the spreadsheet. This is in ZAR and South African Rands. You can go and adjust it to US dollars. How you do that is you select the cells, you click format cells, you then go to number, and you can go to currency and change it here in the drop down. Okay, so everywhere where there's a monetary value, I've put in our local currency, which is South African Rands. So the different categories are your base vehicle, that's your donor car. You can find that under the definition. We've got chassis, that's all bodywork including windows, doors, and excluding controls. Wheels and tires, that's basically wheels and tires. Suspension, so that's wheel hub to the bush including the anti-roll bar. So the wheel hub to the control arm bush. Brake system, that's all of the brake components. Pedal, from the pedal. Engine cooling, so that includes the disc as well. Engine mechanical systems, engine intake to exhaust, so that's everything for the engine from the intake system all the way to the exhaust system. Cooling system, that's oil and water cooling systems. Driveline, everything from gearbox to output shaft at wheel. Mechanical controls, that's steering wheel, steering rack, gear linkage, clutch, pedal, accelerator cable, excluding brake pedal obviously. Electrical, that is the wiring, battery, fuses, etc. You have electrical control and instrumentation, that is your ECU, that's the engine control unit, dash, switches, sensors, etc. Safety, that's obviously your seat, your harness, fire extinguisher, any other safety equipment that might be required. We also have labor, that's if you farm out labor, you bring someone in, filming, whatever. Deliveries, that's if you're using deliveries to do work or any sort of purchases that includes delivery or doesn't include deliveries. Fuel system, that's fuel tank to fuel rail, including injectors. Fasteners, that's just random fasteners that you might buy. Branding, if there's any branding required. And commissioning. Commissioning is when we basically get the thing running and then we build up to, so after its first start to when it does its first track day, or the first test. That's the commissioning period, when you actually dial in the car, make sure everything's right, running, testing, etc. So those are the categories that I've defined for you. And when you go and plan your costs, you plan it according to these categories. So you then say, okay, now we're going to, I've budgeted, I need a base vehicle, I need a starting vehicle, and let's say it's an E30, and we're going to buy it off Facebook Marketplace, and I've estimate based on what I've looked for, we're looking at about 55,000 Rand. And then so you go, and based on what you want to do, you say, okay, suspension, and we can filter here everything for suspension that I've put in here. This is all the BMW E36 costs I've put in here. And then under cost item, you would put in everything that you think you're going to spend on your project, or you're planning for your project. And then you put in the budget cost per line item on every single one. And then under supplier, you can say, okay, well, I'm going to buy some of the components here and some of them there, and this forms my cost plan. And so you go through all of the different components, as I mentioned before: base vehicle, chassis, wheels, tires, suspension, brakes, all of those components. And what that gives you at the end of the day, and it's all automated in the spreadsheet, is it then gives you your planned cost, which you can see in column D under each category. And then at the bottom, it shows you a total value. So then, let's say I've now budgeted 423,000 Rand for this build, and that is now what I'm planning to spend on this project. And then you can see as a report here, just your basic planning on your costs. And where's your highest cost? It's, oh, well, I don't mind, it's on the engine, it's fine, I know that I'm looking for this kind of power, we're going to spend money on suspension, and obviously the vehicle will cost X amount, and we're going to put a decent ECU, and that's the bulk of the money, and that's fine. Then what you do is you go to the schedule side of things. Now, I haven't put too much information in here, but what you do is you put a start date. When do you think you're going to start? And these dates here will calculate based off of that. The thing here is not to overthink it too much, but try and group a lot of the work together. So the thing here is that you might only be able to work weekends on your project, let's say Saturday and Sunday. So then you go to the spreadsheet, and it's just an example of a way to do it, but maybe just highlight the Saturdays and Sundays and say, okay, well, those are the only times I'm really going to be able to work on this car. And then you go to over here and you say, okay, cool, then base vehicle, we're going to buy it on this, or you know, a lot of the purchasing you can do during the week, but the actual work, installing the suspension, we're going to only be able to do that this week. And so you can plan out the work, and when you get the costs like that, and that will basically help you to get to a finish date. It's not a perfect system. If you want to build a really intelligent planning tool, you can. There's some intelligent spreadsheets you can look for in Google in terms of Gantt, or you can use some of the planning software that's out there. But ultimately, this is a really basic tool you can use to plan the work. Then when it comes to the costs, so what I've done is I have just put in some random costs here. And when you start procuring, so buying some of the stuff and doing the work, farming it out, a lot of your purchasing you're gonna place in here. So you will have multiple lines for one item. What does that mean? Like under the brake system, you're gonna have multiple components to your brake system. And if you have extra stuff you've spent money on, you just put it at the bottom, and it doesn't matter, you just put it in the order. And let's say it's now the brake system, and you had to buy additional brake fluid, which you didn't plan for, and that means there's no budget for it. So you leave the budget as 0, and you've now spent another 600. Well, you bought 4 bottles, so let's say call it 2,678 Rand on that. Then you don't have a budgeted price for it because you didn't plan for it. And as you go and you spend money, it's important to keep track of this. You can also put the dates in, and see how that works. But then at the end, that will give you, it will bring up the totals as you go along through the project here. And you can see on the right hand side the plan versus actual. I've added a column here where you can see if you over budget what you planned for this section of work, or if you're under what you planned for all those different sections of work. So I've just put in random numbers, and you can see on the purchase of the car we actually over, or we spend a lot more than I planned. And on a couple of things like the chassis we over, the brake system we over, but for a lot of this stuff we under budget, or we're very close to it. Overall at the bottom you'll see that it'll show you that you are now over or under the totals. Here we 13,000 over budget, so spend 13,000 more. Then as you populate it, you will see the orange shows you your actual total costs. And then again, this is just a tool to help you get and realize your goal, your dreams and aspirations for your project, to be able to execute and build the awesome project car that you've been wanting to do and have fun with. So I hope you can use it. I certainly use it. It just helps me. The one massive advantage is that when you go to capture your costs and you fill in these as you spend the money, when I go to refer work to other people, then I can say okay, or when I do another project, then I know okay, all of the brake lines I bought from this company, and these I bought from here, and this is how much it cost me. Like for instance, control arms, wheel bearings, etc. It's all captured in one place. Now it takes a lot of discipline to do this. It's actually not hard. As you spend the money, you just put it in here, and at the end of the day it will give you this picture, which I've made it printable, so it prints on an A4 page. You can print it on A3, whatever you want, and it gives you the information at hand for you to correctly manage your project. And it's important in the setup phase, so when you're doing your initial planning, to do it as accurately as possible, and that means trying not to veer off course during your execution. So if I plan for a track day car and phase 1 of this build, try and stick to that as closely as possible. With my E36, we went over double the budget, because it started as one thing, but as it evolved, I got investors and we decided to just do it properly and not do a very cheap and nasty build. So in that case, yes, it worked out because I got investors, but if you don't have that kind of capital, then you really just need to focus on keeping the project true to its heart and true to what the objective is. So anyway, I hope this has been helpful, and I hope you can use this tool. It's a great planning tool I use, and I've included a to-do list here for you, but we've got the different categories here that you can play with, and you can just add items. If you don't want to do a whole planning schedule, you can just do this and tick it yes, no. Again, it's just a tool to help you achieve your objectives. So I hope you enjoyed this. Hopefully soon we're going to be back on the Ford and the BMW. The BMW is very, very, very close. We've got some awesome stuff coming up with that, and the Ford, we're trying to just push to get the Ford done. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. We'll catch you next time. Ciao.